Hi, I've been playing this game Bloody Monday. It's a Napoleonic block war game. Here's Locks. Very nice is too. It is Napoleon at the gates of Moscow. It is a division-sized game, 1 turn, 3 hours, 2 players with excellent solitaire suitability. It's published by VentoNuovo Games, which is an Italian publisher, and the designer is Emanuele Sant'Andrea. I hope I've pronounced all that correctly. I've got it set up here. I've been playing this solitaire quite a bit, and it plays solitaire very, very well. Obviously, when you're playing a block game solitaire, this type of style of block game, you're going to miss out on the sort of fog of war elements. There is kind of, the only way you can sort of get around that is sometimes I'll stack the blocks so that I forget what's underneath them. But you know, if you're playing 2-player, the blocks would be face up, be stood up, and your opponent won't be able to see what the detail of the units. So in terms of components, the map is a cardstock. So it's a gorgeous map, very clear and easy to read. The blocks are very nice, the stickers look great, everything is very clear, and the way that the game is broken down is an area based game, so each area has a colour code that represents how many blocks can be stacked there, any defensive strengths. So yellow, for example, two blocks of your side can be stacked, and but it gives you a defensive bonus, whereas green, more blocks but no defensive bonus. In terms of the rulebook, talk about components. The rulebook comes in at 24 pages, but the rulebook does include a really excellent historical introduction, Borondino introduction by Jim O'Neill. This is excellent, and there's quite a few pages on that. So if you're not super familiar or haven't read about the history, or just really interested in that aspect of the game, there's a few pages on that, and you also have a couple of pages on optional rules. So really, this is page 16. So you've got less than 16 pages, or about 16 pages of actual rules. The rule book's very well written, very clear. When I read the rules the first time, I didn't really have too many ambiguities, and especially when playing it's a pretty straightforward game, I'll be honest with you, as most block games tend to be. And it uses a lot of the common principles of block games, war games. So each block has a number of pips, I'll call them pips, that represents the strength, and when those blocks are damaged, then they're rotated. So some of those are also rotated when you use them. For example, artillery pieces, every time you use one, they're also rotated, as is your leader, as is your supreme commander. And fundamentally, this game is a game about making decisions. Your forces, and I'll just look at the French for a minute. For example, I'm a few turns in, and Napoleon is over there. He's at 3 pips of command, which means that when you're playing the French turn, you can give commands to 3 of his leaders, and you have more leaders than that. So I think there's about 6 leaders in the French. And on this turn, I can only give commands to 3 of them. So I have to pick and choose who I'm going to give commands to, who I'm going to activate. Once I activate the leader, then that includes all the blocks of that leader that are within that leader's range. So I can't activate every single block every turn, basically, and therefore I have to make some strategic decisions, some gameplay decisions about which blocks I'm going to activate. Also, I can't just have tons of battles, so I have to pick and choose my battles. I can have, I'm pretty sure it's 1 battle per pip of the Supreme Commander, so you can't have loads of battles going on at the same time, and that is in essence how the game plays. That's what makes the game really interesting, is that you have to make these quite hard decisions actually during the gameplay. The combat is very simple. Basically, to pick an easy example, blocks that have red pips roll more dice than say blocks that have black pips. sorry, the numbers you need are lower, sorry, on those blocks. So a red block needs, I think it's through 4, 5 and 6s, I'm going to say, to hit, whereas a block with black dice need 6s to hit, and the number of pips reflect the number of dice. So so for example, this red block here, it's got red, has 5 red pips. This block here has 2 black pips. So this block's going to be rolling more dice and needs lower numbers to hit. You can support the battles with the artillery, and artillery, again, they tend to have red pips, sorry, and normally plenty of them. And every time you use an artillery, you have to rotate it to show that it's, its use. So when you're playing the game, you have to pick and choose. You have to make those kind of quite hard decisions to make. As I said, the game plays solitaire really well, I find, even with the lack of fog of war. And it's because of that decision making. You can't. It's not just a case of moving all the blocks towards each other and just rolling the dice. It's not that sort of style of game at all, which makes it really, really interesting and really compelling as a gaming experience. In terms of complexity, it's a pretty straightforward game, to be honest. Maybe I would describe it as a nearly medium complexity, but honestly, once you've read the rules and you've tried out an activation and you've gone through a combat process, it's really straightforward. This is not a complex game by any stretch of the imagination in terms of wargaming, and it plays probably, I don't know, an hour and a half, something like that. It takes a little time to set up because there's a lot of blocks, as you can see in this example. But this is a game you can easily, comfortably play in an evening, certainly in an afternoon. Probably play it a couple of times in the afternoon, actually. Swap sides if you're playing with someone. That's quite fun. I would go and say for the French to reach the objectives on the Russian side is quite tough. It's quite a challenge. And there's 2 ways you can win. You can either just inflict so many casualties that you break the morale of the opposing army, excuse me, or you can try and get the objectives, which are marked with the stars. And for the French to get all the objectives, I have found is quite a challenge. Normally the French will win. If they win, it's by inflicting the number of casualties. For example, there's Gorky. Some of these objectives down here can be quite challenging to reach. There's another one there right at the bottom there, for example, and this one here in the middle. You have to take command of all 3 areas for that particular one. They can be quite challenging. But yeah, overall it's a great fun game. It's very, like I said, very straightforward. The map is great. The components are great. The rules are clearly laid out. It's got a great period of history to it. This company also makes block games for World War II, and I've got a couple of those. I'll do reviews of those as well. They use a very similar rule set to this. There's some differences for sure. I hope they do more Napoleonic games with these rule sets because it's great. And if anyone familiar with my channel, you'll know that I do have a lot of love for Napoleonic games. So that's probably about it. Great game from these guys. Hope to see more from them. And thanks for watching.